It feels almost disingenuous not to evaluate Liverpool, especially when Liverpool play well or don't play well. And a 3-3 draw against Brighton is kind of not playing well, but then it's also playing well. There are some weird conflicts at Liverpool at the moment, and I kind of want to break a few of those down because a couple of the conversations I've been having don't seem to be the mainstream conversations. And the mainstream conversations obviously are directing your attention towards very specific things that maybe at different points you want to highlight to Liverpool fans. Of course, Liverpool did not play well. Fundamentally, against Brighton, there were bad things that happened on Liverpool's front. The back line doesn't look organised and doesn't seem to have an idea of how to deal with very basic threats, say a ball played in between the right back and the centre back. There are great breakdowns over on things like Tifo as to why Liverpool's structure isn't quite working. So I don't really need to break that down. But the fundamentals of the spacing between the players in the back line, that's not been dealt with. The structure of the midfield immediately ahead of that, where you have Fabinho, sure, at the base of that, but the roles of players on either side aren't quite fitting. And then up front, of course, you've got Mo Salah in a slightly different position, Luis Diaz, or even possibly whoever else is going to play out there. And then a striker that Liverpool don't really know who that is full time yet. Is it Firmino? Is it Jota? Is it Nunez? There are big questions over each section of the team, and one of the only areas where there isn't really a question is Alisson. And you've got to really question how much longer someone like Alisson, how much longer the high-quality international players will put up with this, because Liverpool's system is fundamentally letting down certain elements of the team and therefore letting down the team in the result. Now, that's not to say that there aren't individual errors within that, because Van Dijk has been hung out to dry quite a few times this season. Now, I don't necessarily think that's down to his personal mistakes. There are times where I think that Van Dijk is put into awkward positions by the fact that Matip has to cover, or Joe Gomez has to cover so much of the other side of the pitch down the right when Trent Alexander-Arnold is forward, that you're basically playing 2-3 people isolating Van Dijk and then going, okay, well, we're just going to pass it around this guy here, or we can just get immediately one-on-one. Having said that, I still also think there are a lot of questions over Van Dijk, should we say, and those are questions that are legitimate questions. It doesn't mean that he is finished as a player, because that is a very extreme scale to put him on, but it also means, what is it that we're dealing with in Virgil van Dijk? And is it the injury that is impacting him, or is there an injury and a mental side, or is there wholly a mental side there, or is there another issue that I will get onto later to do with Liverpool's trust between each of these players? Liverpool seem to trust Virgil van Dijk, they seem to trust Alisson, and they seem to trust someone like Matip at the back. But then there's a ball that goes in between Trent and Matip, or then there's a ball that goes over Trent, and time after time that's getting exploited now to the point where the individual errors that are accruing as a consequence of that are costing Liverpool so dearly, and there are such brilliant individual moments from opposition players who seem so confident going forward that way, that the confidence that is given from Liverpool being so vulnerable in that position is resulting in a goal. Now, in previous years, Liverpool were able to deal with that. They had Hendo on one side, they had Wijnaldum on the other, and they had someone, probably Fabinho, sitting deep, covering up the back line. Fabinho, by the way, doesn't seem to know what his role is. Here's the kicker in this. Just because we're highlighting Trent Alexander-Arnold's individual mistakes doesn't mean there aren't individual mistakes on the side of Matip, on the side of Virgil van Dijk, and probably on the side of Robertson or Tsimikas, given whoever's in there. But those are less evident. The whole back line doesn't seem to know what it's doing right now. And it seems to rely on a confidence and a knowledge and a fundamental football idea of, I know where I need to be at this particular point. I need to be closer to Matip, or I need to be further away from Matip and closer to Tsimikas. That means that Liverpool are basically saying to their players, we're going to play this system until you get it. Now, this isn't my idea. There is a brilliant writer called Sam Maguire who has a Patreon, I'll link it down in the description below, who's written more about this. And he's written about Pep Lijnders' idea of where the Liverpool football idea is going. For a very long time, it was much more Klopp skewed. It was much more about the press. And last season, Liverpool were first in terms of the final third presses. They were first in, I think it was something like 48.9 per game or something like that, right? That's now much lower this season. Liverpool are about 10th or 11th, and there's not much between 10th and like 7th in this league, but they're much, much lower down the table in terms of that. So their intensity higher up the field is also much less, meaning that it's giving the opposition much more time to be on the ball, bring the ball forward, and also to just play a ball to a place that might be a bit more dangerous for Liverpool. Now, that's cool, but the system itself is fundamentally letting those players down who are then having to sustain that pressure and absorb that pressure. Doesn't mean those players are bad defenders. It doesn't mean they are bad attackers, fundamentally. What it means is that the system they are playing within is leaving them vulnerable. Now, whether that's vulnerable in terms of the individual players them being exploited, or whether that's vulnerable because they are vulnerable due to their deficiencies in the team, two different questions, right? But with what Pep Lijnders want to do, it looks like he wants to play more of a midfield sitting two, which would be which would be Fabinho and Thiago probably there, or Fabinho +1. And then he wants to have someone more immediately ahead of that, maybe a Fabio Carvalho type, maybe someone who comes a little bit deeper, maybe even more like a 4-2-4 / 4-2-3-1, depending on what the shape of the team is. Now, that doesn't mean that Liverpool can't play this, but it does mean that, and this is, by the way, in Sam's analysis, what Sam was saying was, basically he used to play a very similar system at NEC where he played before, and it's a much more, not total football completely, but a much more fundamental idea of total football and an experimentation with what Liverpool can do, which moves away from some of the Klopp fundamentals that we've known in the past. If I'm honest, I'm not quite sure why Liverpool are playing it. They were onto a good thing. There are a lot of positives that the team was playing with, and it seems like Pep has convinced Klopp that this is a good idea. And within that, there are lots of other big questions that Liverpool have to answer outside of that, right? Do they have the pieces for this? Are they going to sign the pieces for this? Would a Bellingham signing, or at least an influential midfield signing, change much of what's going on for Liverpool right now? After all, the system that Pep seems to want to play relies a lot on the players knowing and moving around in sync with each other. They don't seem particularly in sync right now. They don't seem to know where they need to be at any one point, which calls a question to the coaching. Are Liverpool being coached in the right way? Are Liverpool being pragmatic enough? Are they looking at what they have and saying we're trying to fit square pegs into round holes here? Probably at this point, if I'm being honest. And it makes me wonder, why are they trying to fit square pegs into round holes? Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes when they go back further to the Klopp fundamentals, or when they seem fully committed to the system, it seems a bit of a halfway house at the moment, as they're doing quite a bit of... the way I would put it is, they're halfway between the old system and the new system that Pep wants to play. And they've been moving towards this for 3 seasons now, implementing more and more of these ideas. But if they aren't committed to it, very often that lack of commitment sells Liverpool short right now. But that means you should be all in on Nunez if you want this system to work well. That means you should be all in on Diaz if you want that system to work well. That means you should be all in on Thiago and Fabinho sitting deep, and probably dropping Henderson from the side if we're being completely honest. But that would mean having signed someone else, which means Liverpool are asking and are vetoing a lot of signings in terms of, well, we need someone else. We need the right pieces to fit into this system. And there must be a belief that in the long run, this is the way that you play this football. This is the way that Liverpool want to go. It may also, by the way, show why Liverpool don't necessarily trust each other at the moment. Maybe they are seeing in training and within the games, well, this guy doesn't feel 100% comfortable in this position, or this guy doesn't quite know where he's meant to be, so if I give it to him, I'm going to put him in an awkward position. When the team look confident, they look confident because, it's proving in actuality that the system works. But then as soon as there is a minor question asked of the side, they seem to collapse back in on themselves, and it becomes a real problem. It doesn't mean that Fabinho is a bad player, or Virgil van Dijk's a bad player, or Alisson is a bad goalkeeper, or whatever it is, or Salah is not in form, or whatever it is. It just means that Liverpool aren't necessarily playing to their strengths right now. Now, that brings up another question, right? Do you want to therefore go back and play to Liverpool's strengths, or do you want to push through this period and get to the other side? Is it, by the way, about pushing through? Is it about saying, hey, if we can coach these guys and get them up to a certain level, then we'll be all right in the long run? Or is it about saying, you might have actually done something, you might have gone down the wrong road here? The problem being, Liverpool are now committed to the likes of Nunez. You're not going to get another striker, and you're not going to be able to sell him for either a profit or anywhere near the amount of money that they wanted in the near future. So they are committed to Nunez. And he is showing levels of improvement, but he can't show huge levels of improvement if he's coming on in the 89th minute. He did show like his left foot was a bit better, right? And he almost wants to show people that. But at the same time, if he's dropping that deep and he has to be part of that build-up play even more, he's not being able to get into the dangerous positions. Seems again like a lot like Liverpool don't know who's going where. And then there were criticisms on the radio, say, of taking Jordan Henderson off, who was apparently having a good game, or subbing Milner on at certain points, or where Harvey Elliott plays, or who covers who in which areas. And it seems a lot like a lot of people are going, well, we used to play this way, why aren't we playing that way anymore? That's not the explicit question, but the actual idea is, I think I know how Liverpool play. So when I ask these questions, I'm saying, why aren't we still playing that way? And radio hosts don't know how to analyse this level of play because they're watching Liverpool out the side of their eye most of the time, or they're listening to Chris Sutton or Robbie Savage or whichever moronic pundit is sitting alongside them going, yeah, I think I know more about this than Pep or Klopp or whoever it is. That's also the frustration here. These pieces of analysis require you to watch Liverpool week in, week out, be embedded within what Liverpool are actually doing, be questioning and asking, how does this work? How is this Liverpool system meant to work? How do we want it to work? How does Pep want it to work? How does Klopp want it to work? How do the substitutions work? But there's no room for analysis or nuance online. There is no room for anyone to go, hey, maybe we should try and work out what Liverpool are trying to do. And I think it's all well and good talking about sides being in transition and things moving on and things moving forward, but there is also a time ticker going on here with Liverpool at the moment. There is something that Liverpool have to address very soon. They're slipping away from that, I think, the 11-point lead that Arsenal have on them right now, the 7-point lead that City have, the 7-point lead that Spurs have. And not only that, but it leads you to... how can I put it? The side begin to lose their self-image, this idea that they're competing for something. When they begin to do that, it becomes very tricky to motivate the team because, again, we've seen it, like Liverpool clinging on to something is very different to Liverpool leading the pack. You've got to try and have some form of consistency here because the up and down is also going to be emotionally and mentally exhausting for these players. And alongside that, you've got to be competing. In order to compete at the very top level, you can't afford to just drop away even for one season, which is why it was so important when Liverpool got fourth that season, which is why it's so important when Liverpool do put a drive together that they keep that consistent. You remember towards the end of the season where they were so poor, they put 10 wins together and they made the most amount of points towards the end of the season more than anyone else. So they did make up ground, but at the same time, that can't keep happening. This side can't be the ones to catch up all the time. I get it, it's complex, but at the same time, if Liverpool aren't winning, people know there's an issue. This is a strong side that is in transition, but there are still no excuses there. A side in the modern era needs to be able to transition and still maintain success. It's what Real Madrid are doing. It's what Man City are doing. It is what a number of top... Man City and Real Madrid talk about Bayern, talk about Juve struggle to do that, right? There are other sides that also struggle within this, but there seem to be institutions, sides that are almost unchallenged, sides that seem to be so powerful that they can continue to do this. Liverpool may feel the same. Liverpool may have a roadmap that we don't necessarily know about. But then there's the other side. There is the Emperor's New Clothes idea, that we're attributing something to Klopp here that maybe Klopp, we don't know what he's capable of, right? Now, I get it. I'm not saying Klopp isn't capable of winning something or that Klopp isn't capable of transitioning the team, but there are lots of people going, 7 years of Klopp and then you got the best of him. Well, it's actually nothing to do with that. That's really stupid analysis in the first place, if you think about it. Or it's, well, Mane was part of leading the press before and they don't know who to press now. Well, maybe they're trying to press in a different way. Maybe they wanted to move away from that. Maybe there are other questions Liverpool trying to ask. But the point is, you can't just say, this is how it's been in the past, therefore it's how it should be in the future. Football is moving on, people are moving on, people are trying to move beyond the current systems because is Liverpool playing the same system as Rafa Benitez played, 4-5-1? Are Chelsea playing the same system as Mourinho played, 4-5-1? No, football moves in cycles and the cycles are moving forward at the moment. You can see Liverpool tried to sign a number 9, Barcelona tried to sign a number 9, City tried to sign a number 9. Lots of people are trying to sign these kinds of players that they believe are going to fit into the shapes that football is moving towards. It's just that some people are currently transitioning much better, say Man City, than Liverpool, and other sides are struggling to do that transition, say Liverpool. Now, some of you might think this is absolute waffle, and you might say, hey, all they've got to do is go out there and win. We need to play to our strengths, etc. But I actually think that Liverpool are trying to change in a time where other teams have begun to work their system out, and they knew we have to change. Teams now know a blueprint of how to beat or at least nullify Liverpool. So we're trying to come up with a blueprint, a new blueprint, something different. And it's sometimes working, right? They scored 3 against Brighton and then go and concede a stupid goal the other end. They concede loads against Napoli and then the second half begin to create more. But then there are confusing decisions in that. Why bring Nunez on the 89th minute? Why make the substitutions you did make? Why change the shape in that way? These are all things that Liverpool fans are going to have to wrestle with themselves and work out what they want to try to achieve, what they are trying, what is it that Klopp is trying to do here? What is it that we're backing? What is it that we are trying to support here? So yeah, sure, it is frustrating. And believe me, sitting on a show where I have to justify some of these decisions or try to rationalize more likely some of these decisions is very frustrating. And people worry Liverpool will drop away. People worry that that Liverpool won't make big signings, because big signings will go, well, I see Trent getting hung out to dry. I see Van Dijk getting hung out to dry. I see Thiago frustrated. I see Fabinho angry. I see Hendo not looking good. I see Mo Salah, who was on for a Ballon d'Or, not doing that. And I see Nunez signing there and then dropping off. These are all signs that if you're a big player, you wouldn't necessarily want to go there right now. But at the same time, if you're a big player, you may be that missing piece for Liverpool. So, am I concerned about Liverpool this season? Yes, extremely. Are they there to be gotten at? Yes. Are there mistakes within the side that are being caused by the system? Yes. Does that mean those players are bad? No, they can be coached and they can be changed. But the conversation online isn't about that, is it? It's about finding one clip which shows this player is bad. It's about finding one clip that shows fundamentally Liverpool's system are flawed in X way. And it's about showing that one clip of, well, Trent isn't trying hard enough. I just don't believe that to be true sometimes. And I get it, like there are issues, but the line's meant to be pushing up when Trent is going back. And if there's a line that's meant to be pushing up, how would it work the other way? Does that make sense? Like Trent can't go back and cover someone when the line's pushing out. So this is the thing is, if I'm confused by that, imagine how confusing and difficult it is to implement that the other way, right? Just ask yourself some of those questions. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying that therefore Klopp and Pep are right to move in this direction. I'm just saying this is the direction they're trying to move in. And if you want to be a Liverpool supporter, maybe you should evaluate that and try and applaud some of the things they are doing. Try and support the direction the club are moving in. There are currently very big questions over whether it's the right direction. And there are big questions over whether in the short term it could cost Liverpool the long term. Rangers on Tuesday, I think, should be interesting. But this is the thing. It's not about winning one-off games. It's consistency for Liverpool right now. And that isn't coming. I see changes. I see signs things are moving differently. But it's not consistent enough. And it doesn't seem sure enough right now. So let me know in the comments below what you guys think. And I'll see you in the next video. Much love.